This is Andrew again. I'm sitting here with two people at the Ignite conference in Atlanta, Georgia, Ignite 2016. This is another one of our Ignite Wire episodes, episode 152. I'm sitting here with Randy and John from Rackspace. So let me go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves first.
Sure, I'm Randy Drisgill. I'm a product engineering manager at Rackspace, a SharePoint MVP, longtime friend of Andrew's here from back when he pulled me and John both in to do public websites in SharePoint 2007 timeframe. So good times here.
Awesome.
Yeah, hey, I'm John Ross, product manager at Rackspace. I'm focused on SharePoint, Exchange, and Office 365 in the mid-market. Known Andrew a long time. Back in the day whenever he drove down from Jacksonville to help save the day. It's been a fun ride. Also a SharePoint MVP, but thanks for having us, Andrew.
Absolutely. Yes, I know you guys from, we're somewhat local to each other. We don't live about 2 hours away from each other, but I know that there's, I can't even remember what year that was. It was around, I guess it was around 2006, 2007 kind of. And you guys were working for a consultancy down in Orlando. I came down to kind of help you guys with something. As when I was a trainer at MindSharp, and I think I left MindSharp soon after that to kind of go out on my own. And then you guys, soon after that, you guys went out on your own. You guys went to go work with SharePoint 911 and Shane Young and Nicola Young over there.
Yeah, that was back in the days whenever we started looking at SharePoint. I think it was 2003 to try to make a public-facing site. And you told us we were crazy. And there was this new thing coming out called Moss 2007 that was going to be the answers to our prayers, but. Microsoft was kind enough not to make any documentation for that product for about a year after it came out, so you really did help save the day on that.
That was a good source of business for a while. It was a really good source of revenue. It's wonderful when they release a product and there's no documentation because, hey, there's an opportunity.
That's how I think your relationship with MindSharp was actually pretty helpful at the time.
Absolutely. So, what have you guys been doing lately? I mean, I know we wanted to talk. We talked a little bit offline about some of the stuff you guys have been working on, some stuff around SharePoint, stuff around Azure, stuff around automation with SharePoint and Azure, some SharePoint Framework stuff. So why don't we kick off a little bit, talk a little bit about SharePoint Frameworks. Randy, I know we talked offline. You told me you were at one of the dev kitchens. Yep. Earlier this morning, and we'll have this episode come out probably next week. We sat down with Mike Emerland for about an hour, and talked in depth with him about what is the SharePoint framework. Finally, trying to get the Microsoft perspective on what they wanted to share, what was going on with SharePoint framework, and what I'm curious about to get from you is what you said you've taken a look at it, and I know your background is more on the design side, more on the front end dev side.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious kind of what your perspective is on it. Not to pass judgment. If you want to, go right ahead. But what's your experience in doing development, and how do you feel about all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I hit up the team that was working on some of these features, and I was saying, what's the future of UI customization? I'm a master page and CSS guy. I know kind of some of that stuff's going to the back burner. I hear it's going to the framework stuff, and they kind of said, well, right now with the framework, all you can really do is modern web parts. But if you want to come out to Dev Kitchen and learn about how it works, you're more than welcome. So I went out there, brought one of our devs out there with me that's a little bit better at the coding side of it. I'm sort of like a JavaScript guy from way back when it was just like simpler time when things were object-oriented in JavaScript. And so I brought my dev out there, and we got introduced to it. And it's interesting in that, I think Microsoft is like, it should be easy for JavaScript developers to pick it up. But I think what they're really talking about is a modern JavaScript developer, where it's someone that's used to coding in object-oriented JavaScript and TypeScript, ES6, that kind of thing. Microsoft's building all their stuff in React. There's grunting, and there's nodes, and there's NPMs, and gulping,
no
and
grunting.
GitHubbing, and all that kind of stuff. Visual Studio Code, all that stuff. But it's kind of neat because now it's sort of, I can bring my MacBook in and code off of it, that kind of thing. But there is a lot to learn, and I actually, went to the Pluralsight courses and tried to pick up a lot of that stuff, and we were able to actually build some stuff. What we learned, though, right away was that, if you're pulling in old libraries and things like that don't have a typings file in TypeScript, that's going to trip you up right away. So find libraries that have typings files and that kind of thing. And so I'm not really sure how easy it's going to be for people to pick up. It's sort of this new, sort of more organized development process. But I think, once people get the hang of it, it is pretty interesting. You can develop stuff and see the changes right away instead of having to update DLLs on the server and then hit refresh and all this kind of thing. Like, you can see the changes right away. So I think that's cool, and I'll be interested to see where they go with it. If they let you make apps and let you customize the UI in it, I mean, that's what I'd really be interested in seeing more of.
Yeah, we talked a little, when I was talking to Mike about it, to Mike Ehrman about it at Microsoft, one of the things that we brought up in the episode was, you really have like two different audiences going to be trying to pick this up. If you get the traditional SharePoint developer, I agree with you. It's going to be a bit of a challenge because they're used to the more Visual Studio-based approach, at least the way it is today. Maybe we get better tooling and stuff down the road, but this way of doing using like Yeoman and using Gulp and using NPM and Node to build up your developer environment, your tool chain and everything, it's relatively new to the traditional SharePoint developer. But on the other side, when you look at people that are maybe not in the SharePoint platform today and that are using things like building web apps and using Node or building Angular-based apps or React or something like that, they're used to those kinds of tools and everything. So now you may not have, they're going to look at it and say, oh, I'm right at home, right? You see most of the demos that you see people at Google doing these days, they're using Visual Studio Code to go through and to do their demos and show this stuff up. So I think that it's a little bit more, it's going to be interesting to see how the two different environments or two different camps, is there interest with that more traditional web developer and not the SharePoint developer in getting into SharePoint development? Or is you going to have the SharePoint developer, are they going to adopt this new thing? It's going to be interesting to see how it plays.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, like you were saying, I think the reason why they made this is so they get the young coders that they've got their MacBooks, they're used to all this stuff, and it's a workflow they're used to, but are they going to want to code in SharePoint?
Yeah.
Is that exciting to them?
Yeah.
I don't know. That'll be the interesting thing.
I actually I told you earlier, I ran into a guy that used to be in our SharePoint user group. So we're here in Atlanta, but we're actually from Orlando. And I ran into a guy from our Orlando user group, and he was telling me this morning that he has a lot of developers on his team that, were struggling to develop in SharePoint in the past. And I said, are they, what kind of developers are they? I said, are they, traditional .NET guys? He's like, no, they're more JavaScript guys. And I said, oh, this new model going forward is probably going to feel like a lot more familiar to them, as opposed to kind of the old server-based way of things.
Yeah, I think it will be.
In theory, we'll see how everybody kind of adapts to it.
You still have to understand the SharePoint,
absolutely,
services and what a list is and all that kind of stuff. But they should be able to take to it a lot quicker.
I think so. It'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. So another thing you guys talked about that you're doing is a lot more stuff at Rackspace, but with SharePoint, 365, Azure, all that kind of stuff. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing in that space?
Yeah, so I think, especially being here at Ignite, we go around and in my job as a product manager, part of my job is to try to understand what do people want so that we can kind of help to deliver solutions that people actually need and are going to use and, ultimately spend money on, right? So I've been going around asking a bunch of people, what is the most interesting thing to you? What are you looking for? And the first thing out of everybody's mouth is Azure. Everybody's more interested in saying, how can I take my traditional workload like a SharePoint or an Exchange or something and deploy it to something like a modern cloud platform like Azure? And we're hearing more and more about that. And so at Rackspace, we've been known for a long time about hosting dedicated servers and physical servers and everything, but we've actually fully embraced this idea of supporting things on anybody's cloud, whether it's ours, whether it's somebody else's. And so we're looking to get to a point where if somebody wants to deploy SharePoint, we say, we can do an automated build of SharePoint on Azure. We do it in an automated provisioning fashion. We do it in, I think internally we're doing tests. We can deploy it in a matter of hours. Or traditionally, with some of the other big providers or even at our own, it might take several weeks, maybe even a couple months to deploy a traditional environment. So tremendous savings. You can get up and running faster and time's money, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, like John was saying, I think, a lot of people don't realize that like Rackspace, we now sell Office 365, we now sell Azure, we sell AWS. So it's not just about our cloud anymore. It's about wherever you want to put your SharePoint, we want to support it however you want to. You want to put some of it in 365, SharePoint Online? Absolutely. You want to put some on our-prem, that's fine. You want to put some of it in Azure, and if you want us to connect it hybrid, which is what we think really the big opportunity for us is, kind of connecting these things, helping you out with your identity, getting these things connecting, be able to leverage, the evergreen 365 environment with like something, that you can actually control and secure and not have change on you, which is your on-prem hosted with us or hosted in Azure, SharePoint environment.
I think whenever whenever we were exploring hybrid and this idea, we were trying to understand, like, do people really want this? And we went around and asked a lot of people in the industry. We talked to Mike Fitzmaurice over at Nintex. We said, do people actually want hybrid? Them over at Nintex, they see a lot of this, and he said, every customer is a hybrid customer, and he said, everybody is on a journey to the cloud. And there are some people that are all in on something like a 365, but for everybody else, whether they're just dipping their toe into the pool or whether they're farther down the line, just about everybody is looking to consume a cross section of things. I mean, just about every company even has like line of business apps that they want to connect 365 to. It's all hybrid.
Yeah. Do you see like a lot of people that are doing? You guys deal a lot with hybrid, so you're looking at people that are doing Office 365 deployments, connecting to an on-prem deployment too. Do you see those on-prem deployments that they're deploying? Are they taking those and trying to put those in Azure? Or are they still trying to keep those local? Or are those machines of the farms that they're still going to own? They're still going to babysit. Are any of them trying to take those and move those up to Azure?
I think it's ultimately a complicated question. I mean, I think the answer is that migration. Whenever you're talking about like getting something from one place to another, I mean, whether you're talking about jumping versions or even just putting data from on-prem into the cloud, it's a big concern. I mean, if I'm a company and I've got like terabytes of data, it might not be feasible for me to try to actually move that into Azure. So in a lot of cases, we're seeing customers that for some of their legacy data, they just want to connect it with a common identity.
Yeah.
But for other things that are more common workloads that they're using on a daily basis, they're moving it into Azure. But especially with Azure AD and everything, you have the ability now to get the benefit of like the two-way searching and things like that. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a few years ago when we were, dipping our toe into SharePoint on Azure, with the idea around the campfire at Rackspace was, people are going to use this for like dev environments, something they can spin up and spin down. But, as of, this year, it really seems to be taken off where people want to put their main SharePoint environment in Azure and run it in Azure and be able to take advantage of the scale of it. And also I think Microsoft makes it easy for them to consume it with their enterprise agreements and things like that.
Yeah, and in some of my research on the market and everything, one of the things I found is that for most mid-market companies, mid-market and above, they're not going to be 100% all in on the cloud. We're probably going to cross the 50% threshold for companies that are all in on the cloud. Probably not until close to like 2025. So, I mean, in the IT industry, that's an eternity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the point is that everybody is looking to move to the cloud, but I think the hybrid state is not just going to be a transitional state. It's going to be a destination for a lot of companies.
That makes a lot of sense. It's definitely a changing time. Watching what everyone's trying to figure out their own path in this. Where do they fit? Do they want to go full cloud? Do they want to go full SaaS? Do they want to actually do IaaS in their cell, or do they want to keep it on-prem? I mean, the option that you guys that Rackspace has to offer too is that you guys, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you position yourselves as like the hybrid to be able to help you with the hybrid model, getting things up and running and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we like to say that like we've been hosting SharePoint for forever.
Yeah.
We have the guys that have been doing it over and over and over and over and over again, traditionally, in our prem. And so now that we could put it in other clouds, it's the same thing there. And it's really, we consider it the same thing. It's on-prem. SharePoint is just in the Microsoft cloud, but we want to set it up and support it the way we know how to make sure it runs, perfectly every time. And so that's sort of what we offer. And then so we have that expertise. Why not, do that in a hybrid fashion as well, so that we could, because we figure that most customers are going to have Office 365 also. They're going to decide what workflows they want to have in the SaaS model. Maybe they'll do their email there, maybe they'll do some of their email there, some on-prem, but they're going to leverage something, even if it's just the Office clients, and then they'll decide what workloads they want to have more control over. They might run those more in a dedicated type of scenario.
Well, I mean, so when you think about cloud, right, people want to come to us, or even Office 365, and they want to consume SharePoint. They want to consume the application. At the end of the day, they shouldn't care where it lives, whatever. And, in the instance of 365, if SharePoint and 365 will meet their needs, great. if they need more customization, some type of more control that something like SharePoint in Azure or somewhere else will provide, then great. Like, we want to abstract that management from them, but give them the flexibility to do what they need with the application. So like I said, a customer wants to come in, they want SharePoint. As long as SharePoint works for them, I really don't think it should matter where the server.
Yeah, we see a lot of customers come in. They have custom code that they've written from years ago when they brought Andrew in to help them write it. And Microsoft was saying, definitely build that custom code out.
It was the best option at the time.
Right,
yep.
And so now some of them are kind of stuck, and so those companies need to figure out I can move some things to the cloud, some I can't until I rewrite some of that code. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting time right here. Let me ask you guys: you have anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up here? That anything you want to share with our listeners, or?
No, I mean, I think
hot potatoes.
I think what I'm really thinking about a lot these days is we're talking about hybrid, and kind of the lifeblood of hybrid is really identity.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're talking a lot about Azure AD and how to bring all of these worlds together. After identity, I think security is top of mind. I mean, I'm sure that when we're talking cloud, that's always one of the big concerns that people have is if I'm putting this stuff on somebody else's servers, how do I make sure that it's gonna I'm not giving away the keys to the kingdom or anything like that. So
yeah. The other thing I'll say is just I'm just excited that SharePoint's back. I mean, don't you get the feeling that like it's on everybody's mind again? Where a year ago it was like it's dead, right? Like no one's talking about it.
It's funny you say that. So I just sat down with some people who actually had a Power BI dashboard of all the tweets that have been going on about the conference. The number one term, SharePoint.
There you go.
Then it's Office 365, and then Azure, or back and forth. It kind of changes from yesterday to today, but still, SharePoint is still the dominating tweet.
Well, I think it was probably the dominating one last year, but everybody was saying, is it dead afterwards?
It was more of a question, right? It wasn't so much of a statement.
What's going on with it? They aren't talking about it.
I think, it is. We talked about that with Mike this morning as well. I mean, same thing. It's just, I do feel like it's got a little bit more of a relevance that people are talking about right now. So it's definitely very interesting.
Cheaper being back doesn't hurt things, I think.
It's resurgence, man. Yeah. It's a resurgence of stuff.
And I'll just add, to piggyback off of what Randy's saying, us at Rackspace, we do a whole lot of SharePoint. We do a whole lot of Exchange, Azure, Office 365. So, sometimes we get a lot of that people talk about us doing all the different millions of things we do at Rackspace, but man, we do a ton of this SharePoint, Exchange, 365, Azure, all the things. So, if you're interested, check out, come and check us out over at rackspace.com, or send us an email.
Absolutely.
I'll give.
Give them your personal phone number.
Yes. I was going to say, how can they get in touch with you guys? How would they follow? Like, John, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so
blog, Twitter.
You can check me out on Twitter. It's what is my Twitter? It's John Ross Jr. So it's John Ross Jr. On Twitter. You can reach out. Always happy to chat about all things cloudy and Microsoft, and I'm willing to bash AC's fandom of the Gators from time to time if you're up for that. So
and you can hit me up at Drisgill, Drisg as in good, ILL. If you want to learn about our SharePoint at Rackspace, it's just sharepoint.rackspace.com. There's a contact form on there where we can get you in the pipeline, but you can just hit us up direct also if you want on Twitter.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. I'm sure our listeners are going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
All right. Anytime, man. Anytime.